Okay. Today, I thought I'd do something on it's just something an observation I've had recently, and it's about the pressure we put on ourselves. And it's because I was thinking about when I feel pressure and overwhelm, and I was thinking that actually a lot of it comes from rather than being actual real external pressure or overwhelm, it comes from me, so from within. So it's the stories I tell myself, the narrative I add to things. Um, and that's obviously then impacting how my nervous system feels, how I respond, and physically what happens to me. So the whole system's going through, and it all comes from the stories that I am basically perpetrating in my own brain about overwhelm and pressure. And I'm sure I'm not the only person that does this. So, um, like as an example, it's not that there's like a deadline or someone chasing me to do stuff. It's just that I have this feeling that if I don't do it, then this will happen or that will happen. And it's like I put these self-imposed rules on myself, and that's causing all the pressure and the overwhelm and the burnout because it doesn't really exist. Um, it's kind of been almost like oh yeah, it doesn't actually really mean anything. Um, so basically, when we have these self-imposed rules and standards, it creates more stress on us than the external demands. Because if you think about the external demands, occasionally we have absolute firm deadlines, and we think, okay, we must do that by that deadline, and that's our deadline. For other things, externally, the world's not going to come to an end if I do the cleaning tomorrow rather than today, or if I don't know, if I sort my son's bedroom out, if I get rid of his old toys, if I don't do that for a week, it's not gonna. There's no real stress, right? There's nothing gonna happen. My house isn't gonna fall down because of it, or my son's not gonna have a meltdown. He's not even gonna have a meltdown because I haven't done something. It's just, but then in my brain, I might think, oh, I've got to do that today because that really needs doing. And so now I've created this really needs doing in my head. But I've got all these other jobs that I need to do. So I've got to try and squeeze this job in as well, because if I don't, then well, I don't know. I don't know what even, I don't even know what the outcome will be if I don't do it. Most of it will be that I will feel like I'm a failure. I'll feel like I haven't achieved what I want to achieve. I haven't done what I want to do. I don't follow through. I'm not capable of doing all of this stuff. Um, and it's like we have what I would call it a compassion gap. Because if a friend came to us and they said, right, listen, I've got all these things that I want to do today, but I'm cracking up because I can't get them all done. The first thing you say to them is, do they actually all need to be done today? Is it the end of the world if they're not done? And you'd be really supportive and compassionate towards them. But when it's yourself saying it, you're like, oh, you're so useless. Why can you not do all this stuff? It's like, because you're one person and there's only so many things you can actually do in a day. And you also need to worry about being sane and calm and recovering from doing the jobs that you're doing. So we get into this kind of loop where we criticize ourselves constantly for the things we're not doing, but we stop noticing the things that we are doing. So we're doing loads, but we're not doing as much as our self-imposed rules are telling us we should be doing. And I'm really guilty of this because I always think I should be doing more. I think that I should be able to do more than anybody else, and I should have these really high levels of achievement. And it comes from a form of perfectionism. It comes from my childhood, from experiencing domestic violence as I was growing up, and growing up with an alcoholic father. And perfectionism became one of my ways of coping, where I had to be very self-sufficient, I had to do everything myself, and I had to be the best at everything. And it became very much a coping mechanism. And so over my life, I've worked on numerous ways to get over perfectionism. And in a lot of ways, I am over it. So I can now do tasks if I'm not the best at it, and I can do tasks if I'm not perfect at it. But I still have this whole belief that I have to be constantly proving myself. And I can't ask for help because I need to sort it out. And that's, again, this is all part of the learning process. I ask for help more than I used to. and I give myself more space than I used to. But these things we learn in childhood take a long time to fully unlearn. And it's accepting where you are in the journey and appreciating where you are. So that being said, like, one of the things I would say about this whole process of what the stories would tell us in your head, when I was thinking about it, I was thinking about Buddhist stories that I've read over time, and the learning that I've done through the Buddhist practice. And one of the things that struck me with it and that kept coming up in my brain is that suffering is inevitable. Okay, this is what Buddhism basically says, that everybody suffers. And there's a great story about a woman who goes to the Buddha, and her son has died, and she asks for the Buddha to bring her son back to life. And he says he will when she brings him a flower from the garden of the house that's seen no suffering. Anyway, after years of searching, she goes back to him and she says, I get it, everybody suffers. But this is where the self comes into it, where we actually do have the control. The extent to which you suffer, the extent to which that suffering impacts your life, you get to determine. Nobody determines that. So it's the same with the overwhelm. Actually, this is very empowering when you realize that the pressure you're putting on is being put on by yourself, not by external things. Because if the pressure that you're experiencing is down to external factors, you have no control over it. And so then it's very demotivating and it's very depressing and it's very hard to work through. However, when you realize that that pressure is coming from yourself, it's really positive because I can control the pressure that I put on myself. I have control over that. Nobody else does. So if I decide to release the pressure will be released. And so it's getting into that empowered way of thinking that actually the control comes from within, not from without. So to do that, what I've worked on is a little exercise that I'm going to share with you so that you can give it a go as well, see what you think. And this is how I'm going to be working through things as I kind of try and work on rewriting some of these stories and getting out of the building the own pressure in my own mind. So the first step is to catch the story. So what am I telling myself about this? So when I get into the point where I start to feel, and this is tuning into my body. So I start to feel my nervous system going on edge, the anxiety rising. And then I can think, why is that happening? And usually when those sensations start happening, there's a story I'm telling myself in my brain. So catching that story. And then the next step would be to check the source. Is this real or is it a rule I made up? So when I look at that reason, the story that's going on in my head for why I feel the way I feel, I need to start then ask myself, is this actually, like if it's pressure and overwhelm, is this a real pressure or is it a pressure that I have made up? Or do I really have to do all these tasks? Is that like something that I have to do all these tasks? Or have I decided that I want to do all these tasks? And that's the key. I actually want to do it. Not that I have to, I want to. And so when we start to check that, then we're starting to kind of challenge it. But then we can flip the script. So step into the mindset of talking to a friend. What would I say to someone I love if they came to me with this story? Okay, so how would I talk to them? And then you can kind of take those words and anchor them into your body. So you can say them out loud and you can do deep breathing at the same time or put your hand onto your heart. Because then it's like about when we're working with the nervous system, we want the body to understand as well. Because if the body is staying on high alert, then it does any amount of rewriting the story in our brain is not going to sit because the body is out of balance and the nervous system is out of balance. So it's not gonna sink through and we're just gonna switch back up again really quickly. So when we're flipping this script and we're going through the positive things that we would say to a friend, we do some nervous system regulation at the same time. So maybe you do some deep breathing. Maybe you just comfort yourself. Maybe you would put a weighted blanket, if you've got a weighted blanket around you as you say these words to yourself. So you're getting that comfort and that support and you're telling the nervous system, I'm really safe and it's okay. So we're doing it on all the levels. So I'd love to hear from you and kind of share with me how it feels, the changes that are occurring when you start to release this internal pressure. I'd love to know. And I'd love for you to share as well. Do you think that your stress comes from external demands or from pressure you put on yourself? So share with me what's happening for you on those things. And I'd love to hear more. And if you like this video, remember to like and subscribe so we can get it out to more people.